Welcome. This is video 5 of the Assessing Risk of Significant Harm training course for child protection practitioners. Videos 5, 6 and 7 explore the legal concept of significant harm. They present the three components of harm, significance and likelihood, and how these are incorporated into Risk 2 and other tools. Video 5 looks at what is harm. What is significant harm? In video 3, we introduced the terms threshold and significant harm. It is this likelihood of significant harm that indicates whether or not a local authority has a duty to investigate child abuse. Section 47 of the Children Act 1989 says that a local authority who has reasonable cause to suspect a child is suffering or is likely to suffer significant harm has a duty to make inquiries to enable them to safeguard the child. We describe this as a switch. Either a child is or is likely to suffer significant harm or not. That is the threshold. We described it as protecting people's rights, be that the rights of a child to be protected from harm, or of families having the right to private family life. Getting the decision right is critical to protecting people's rights. You'll notice in law that there are several components we need to understand. An useful way of understanding this is to build this logically. We can think about significant harm by starting with establishing harm, then by establishing whether that harm is significant. Not all harm is significant harm. Then we think about what is meant with likelihood. In video 5, we will focus on what is harm. What is harm? Harm is defined in the Children Act 1989. In Wales, the 1989 Act still underpins the safeguarding duties in the Social Services and Wellbeing Act Wales 2014 and the Wales Safeguarding Procedures. There are two elements to the definition of harm: ill treatment, which is abuse, and impairment, which is the impact of a child's need being unmet. Since the Adoption Act, the impact of seeing another person abused, as in the area of domestic abuse, is also included as an impairment. Most, if not all, children will have some needs that are not met. The question for Children's Services is whether an unmet need or needs results in ill treatment or impairment. I think it is ill treatment that is easiest to define. Ill treatment means harm or abuse. Impairment, on the other hand, is more complex. It is the effect that the failure to meet the child's needs can have, and this can be in any of their needs: the development of their health, or meeting their emotional needs, or their basic needs for care and stability. Added to the definition in the Adoption Act is witnessing the ill treatment of others, the emotional impact of seeing abuse, for example, the impact of domestic abuse on children and young people. Under Section 31(9) of the Children Act 1989, and amended by the Adoption and Children Act 2002, harm is defined as impairment or ill treatment. If we look at each of these, impairment includes an impairment of health or development, and health includes physical or mental health, and development means physical, intellectual, emotional, social or behavioural development. Impairment also includes the witnessing the ill treatment of others. Ill treatment includes sexual abuse and forms of ill treatment that are not physical. To summarise, harm may be caused because the child is ill-treated, for example, through being physically abused or suffering neglect, or the child's unmet needs resulting in impairment of their health or development, or witnessing the abuse of another. Exercise 2. What is harm? Exercise 2 builds your understanding of harm. It asks you to imagine the types of case scenarios where you may be able to identify the different types of harm. Imagining the different scenarios will help you relate this information to your own practice. From the Downloads page on the Practice Resource module, you will find a workbook to accompany this course. This exercise is in the workbook with instructions and an example of a recording template for you to complete. You can pause the video in order to fill in your workbook. In your workbook, there are 3 definitions of harm. These are the ill treatment of a child, the impairment of health or development, and the impairment through witnessing the abuse of another person. Please write an example of a case scenario that would be illustrative of each type of harm. You may have an existing example from practice to record, or otherwise you should imagine the typical context where this may be identified. One of the types of harm is ill treatment, which is abuse. Ill treatment includes sexual abuse and forms of ill treatment which are not physical. Please write an account from experience or imagination that would illustrate this kind of harm. A short paragraph would be adequate. You can pause the video in order to fill in your workbook. Another type of harm is impairment of health or development. That means their needs in these areas are unmet, resulting in an impairment to their health or development. When we talk about health, we mean physical or mental health, and when we talk about development, we mean physical, intellectual, emotional, social, or behavioural development. Please write an account from experience or imagination that would illustrate this kind of harm. A short paragraph would be adequate. You can pause the video in order to fill in your workbook. Another type of harm is impairment through witnessing the abuse of another. Please write an account from experience or imagination that would illustrate this kind of harm. A short paragraph would be adequate. You can pause the video in order to fill in your workbook. Reflect on the exercise you have completed. Were you able to describe the circumstances that would be examples of each type of harm? Were any of the 3 types easier for you? Why do you think that may be? Were you able to identify unmet needs that resulted in impairment? Or were you unsure if an unmet need would lead to an impairment? Once you have worked through video 5 of the Assessing Risk of Significant Harm course, please progress to the next part, which is video 6. Video 6 is the second in a series of 3 videos looking at significant harm. Video 6 looks at what makes harm significant.